Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Topography podcast, exploring the contours of design spaces, be they physical, social, digital, or purely imagined. I am your deviant host, Ashley Hoden. I'm calling back the terms that I published previously through Deviation, since what I am releasing today is actually one of my previous interviews when I first started podcasting under the Deviation banner. And this episode was one of my favorites. Otto Marquart was one of the best people I ever spoke with, and I loved every minute of it. And I just heard this week that he has passed. And I think I talked with him in 2016. It's now 2024. And it was a really great conversation. I cover much more in the intro to the original, and so right now I'm just letting you all know where this came from and why this is the release for this time around. Otto, I wish you the best wherever you are. Thanks. But on the third day of this trip, I met with Merlin Marquart at his home in Pine Bluffs, Wyoming. So his name is Merlin, but he goes by Otto. And so I was hanging with my mom. It was towards the end of our second day of recording, finishing things up on this Kickstarter video, and we drove by the elementary school where she used to work, and also where I went to school prior to her being a teacher. And as we drove by, she casually told me about the father of one of the teachers that she used to work with. So back in the 70s, he lived in my hometown of Fort Collins, Colorado, which is where I was for this recording. And he was a science teacher, but he was a science teacher at a school in the Denver suburbs. At a certain point in his career, he would commute by hitchhiking. And so each morning his wife would drop him off by the highway, and he would hitchhike the 60 miles or so that he had to go to get to his job. And then at night, he would hitchhike back. So when my mom, when she mentioned this guy, I was like, oh, I got to talk to him. I got to hear this. This is Deviation in action back in the 60s and 70s. So I asked if it was possible to meet him. And needless to say, she put it together that afternoon and arranged for us to go and meet him the next day. I was only in Colorado for these 3 days, and then so we put all this time to work anyhow. So maybe let me step back here and say that the thing about people with curious minds, especially if they actively follow that curiosity, is that they're usually not easy to categorize. And such is the case with Otto. He was a teacher, a real estate developer, a home renovator, a Navy man, an inventor, a private investigator, a sculptor. He was a husband, and he was madly in love with his wife, and he's a father to 2 daughters. So how do you describe such a person? A Renaissance man, maybe? Clearly, you can't just say he's a teacher for however many years or this or that. Hit on any one of those points and it leaves out the others. So how do you describe him? A Renaissance man? I prefer the term deviant, one who positively goes astray of convention. And I prefer this term because of the fact that it can be applied so broadly. In all of the realms that I mentioned, the teacher, real estate, developer, home renovator, he lived it unconventionally. So the cool thing about Otto is that he simply followed his curiosity wherever it led. He didn't need categories or rationalizations. He just simply did what came to mind at the time. And that's exactly what Deviation is about. Nurturing the freedom of mind to be curious and building the strength to follow that curiosity when it leads away from the herd. Otto's now in his 70s and he's still living this way. So in the course of our 2.5-hour discussion, he divulged much of his story. And because we covered so much ground, this podcast will be formatted differently than other talks with guests that have been presented in a fairly raw and unedited form. and I hope that you enjoy.
All right. 1940s?
Yeah, I'm talking about the 1940s. And we lived in Nebraska. I'm just a kid. And my dad built a homemade trailer about 25 feet long. And so he was in construction, worked on diversion dams along the Republican River. And wherever he could find work, we'd stay there maybe for a week or two, and we'd come home from school, and then he would, we knew something was going on again, so we had the trailer hooked up, and we went to the next job.
So you would live essentially on site where your father was working?
Well, in that homemade trailer, wherever the job was, that's where he would. We'd go to school, and when we came back from school, we knew that we were going again.
And so every couple of weeks you would be in a new school, new town?
Yeah, we never really made very many friends because it was always Gary and I. Ron, he was still so small. But Gary and I, we would get home, and we didn't have much of anything. So
it's you and two brothers?
Yeah.
Gary and Ron?
Yeah, Gary and Ron. And so Gary and I, we were always going down to the river, of course, along those diversion dams. We'd fish, and there were set lines and stuff like that. And of course, to make a little money, we'd hunt for pop bottles.
To take in for the refund?
Yeah, and it was 5 cents. So in Cambridge was really interesting because we'd always go looking for pop bottles, and then of course we would look for cigarette butts. We'd smoke cigarette butts over land in the gutter.
What age is this?
Huh?
What age?
Oh, we were probably 7, 8. And Saturday nights, the farmers would be in pitching horseshoes, so we'd always look after they got done and see what they left behind, cigars or whatever. We'd dig a hole in Cambridge. We had made a friend there, and we would go and we dug a hole, and we built a kind of a clubhouse. Had a trap door. We'd go down in there, and we had candles on the wall.
Really?
Yeah.
That's great.
So we made our own entertainment because we didn't have any money. Folks didn't have any money.
It's part of the times.
In the 40s, it was one of these things where you didn't. Nobody could help anyone else because everybody was in the same situation.
Yeah.
And that was just after World War II. I'm drifting back again. I was born in Deschler, Nebraska, and it's all Germans. And during the war, we were not allowed to speak German. And of course, I learned a few words. They weren't the right words, but we made it fine, but there wasn't any handouts at all.
Yeah.
Even the churches and stuff, they were all having a hard time. And so Dad would go out hunting for pheasants, and then Mom, mostly German fried potatoes and stuff like that.
Wow. Pretty subsistence living.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the German communities, they were still pretty German, like they were still speaking.
Oh, yeah. In fact, this one place I'll show you in Oak, I bought this place along the Little Blue, and he was a Nazi German. But at any rate, I'm jumping way ahead. So that was pretty much the 40s.
And then how did it go from there into your teens and?
Yeah, well, Dad got a job in Boulder, and he worked on that Gross Reservoir Dam up Coal Creek Canyon west of Denver or west of Boulder.
Mm-hmm.
So he worked up there, and we lived in a trailer park. And of course, in high school, we didn't participate in sports because, it takes money. At any rate, we made our own entertainment. We'd go down to the golf course there that doesn't exist anymore, and we would float down Boulder Creek looking for golf balls. Those golfers, they'd hit a ball and some of them didn't make it, so we'd get inner tubes and we'd float down.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was cold, but you could see those golf balls get wedged in the rocks, and so we'd collect those, and we'd always find them. And then I'd peel logs. There was a guy there that go up Boulder Canyon, and I think I got 20 cents for each log I peeled.
The bark off the outside?
Yeah, the bark off, yeah. So I peeled the logs, and Mom, she made a little money at that little Dairy Queen there, and she'd bring home a quart of Dairy Queen, and that was always tasted good.
Oh, I'd imagine that was quite a treat. Was Boulder the first time you would have been stationed in one place? Were you kind of settled a little bit?
If you ever go up Coal Creek Canyon, it's all developed all around there now, up by that dam. And one day, a friend of mine and I, we went up there, and they still had the scaffolding and the ladders going up, and it kept going up. It was pretty high, but we lived in Boulder. This a friend of mine, he and I, we'd go up to Gold Hill. We'd go in those mines up there.
Really?
Yeah, and look around. We'd camp out at the tailings, and some of those, they had drifts. They'd go in and then up,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if something happened to us, nobody would have found us. Nobody knew where we were.
Yeah.
If something caved in or what, we didn't care. We explored all that, and we'd just take off,
Did you like being settled, or were you used to moving around?
Well, let's see. We lived in Lopeman's Trailer Park there in Boulder, and the folks bought a new moon. I don't know if you ever seen that movie, the long trailer with Deviation Arnaz. That was the trailer, that new moon.
Really?
Yeah. We thought we had a castle.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. We lived in that for quite a while. And then Dad got a different job. We moved to California with that new moon.
Really?
Yeah, dragging that thing all the way about there.
Where in California?
Where the gold, it was called the Tri-Dams. They're building 3 Tri-Dams up there. Sonora.
More in the northern.
Yeah, Sonora, California. And Dad had that, he had a Suburban, and going up over that pass at Lake Tahoe, and he was in the low gear, and I didn't know. And of course, I was riding with him. Mom was following in. They had a Buick Supreme, or it was whatever. At any rate, we going up over that pass. I kept going like this and going like that, to make it so. I wasn't doing any good, and Dad, we made it over to Sonora. I think it was called Strawberry. I'd have to look at the map, but. It was the major gold area during the gold rush out there. And
was there still a lot of gold mining at the time?
Well, there's still people today that are looking around, panning up there.
Yeah.
And but Gary and I, of course, we were always exploring. Gary was still. So we found this one cave, and we went in there, and. I looked on the wall, and there was one of these. It's like a spike, but the miners put a candle on, and shoved it in the wall.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we were the first ones in that one.
Since it had been abandoned.
Yeah. The gold rush, it was the 1800s or something like that.
Yeah, probably like 100 years before that time.
We look all around it, and then Strawberry, that's where it was, where the trailer park was. And we lived there for a while, and then Dad got done with that job, and then we went back to Colorado.
I'm talking with Otto Marquart. He's in the midst of discussing his childhood growing up in Nebraska, Colorado, and California. And so when he was growing up, they would move frequently, every few weeks. And they didn't have a lot of friends, new schools all the time. And he got to the point where he's in Boulder, and how they settled down for a little bit. They bought a larger trailer, and he mentioned it being a long stay, which I kind of caught my attention because after discussing some of the details of being in Boulder, he mentioned that they then moved to California for a new project that his dad was working on. And so really the stay in Boulder couldn't have been longer than a few years, but it was considered a long stay because during his younger years, they had moved every few weeks. And then after being in California for a while, they returned to Colorado and Boulder. And this is where we will again pick up the conversation.
In 58 is when I graduated from Boulder High. And then I thought, well, I'll go work on a dam. I worked on that for a while. I said, I'm not going to do this forever. So Gary was already in the Navy. I said, I'm going to join the Navy. Well, at any rate, Dad was working in Greenland, Thule, Greenland.
Yeah.
That was an Air Force base there. Dad went up there.
That was a pretty important base, I believe.
Oh, yeah, it was. So Dad was up there, and I was always getting into trouble. And so Gary had already gone in the Navy. I thought I'd better go in the Navy. So I decided to join the Navy.
What kind of trouble were you getting into?
Oh, well, I had a wreck out there. Mom and I went back to Hastings to visit Mom's mother. And so a friend of mine there and we had a couple dates. So we thought we'd go up to Grand Island. Well, on the way up there, and I had that Buick Super, and I was zooming around. At any rate, it had a wreck. And I thought, this cinches it. I got to get out of here. So I joined the Navy, went to Omaha, enlisted there, and then a train to San Diego.
It's quite a ride.
It was a troop train, So
were they cattle car almost, or were seated?
No, they weren't bad, but it stopped at, I don't know where it was, Albuquerque or someplace, but they'd give us some time to get off the train. And so here these gals were out there, and we were really having a good time at the train station, At any rate, I won't go any further than that, but so we had to get back on the train, went back down to San Diego, and that was basic training.
In San Diego?
Yeah, in San Diego. Hup, this and, all that stuff. And every now and then I'd get in a fight. I always had trouble with these guys coming in from Chicago. They were smart alecks. So I'm a peaceful guy, but I can't stand some of the abrasiveness. And so at any rate, we'd start out in the head, which is the bathroom, and then we'd wind out in kind of the courtyard.
This fight would just kind of
we were battling out. But I wasn't going to take that crap from those. They're really smart alecks.
Yeah, the East Coast is much more aggressive in demeanor than.
So at any rate, that's enough of that. Yeah. But at any rate, I got out of boot camp. They gave us a pass to go to our next station. I went to Key West. I got transferred to Key West, Florida. And out of that, down there.
I was going to say, that's not a bad post.
Huh?
That's not a bad place to be
Oh, posted. Well, in those days, it was at the naval station there. And made a lot of friends down there on the base. And Marines, they were stationed there. Marines were always shooting themselves. That one was a messy job there. You did a number. Well, I had the duty with another corpsman there, and they called, you got to come up. They had a high security building there at the naval station. And went over there, my God, he blew his head off,
Just by accident?
No, they commit suicide. And I've never seen it. It's the first time something that traumatic. And the 45 was still in his hand. It was still, so I had to step on his hand to get that 40 because it was ready to go again. It was a semi-automatic.
So he could have shot like
yeah,
accidentally.
Well, and it was a mess. It was sliding all over, but it was slipping around on that brain matter. And
is it the stress of being a soldier, or was it?
Some of them, when you're at Key West, you're there in Key West because it's from there to Miami. In those days, it just had. Now they have 4 lanes or 2 bridges going all the way down.
They're all connected. Yeah.
Yeah, now it's just one, but a lot of them they were stuck. When I keep seeing them in the brig, it gets. And these guys are young, like I was, but in the Marines it's totally different.
Than it was in the Navy.
Yeah. So at any rate, enough of that.
How long were you in the service?
4 years.
And then. What'd you decide after that?
Well, I put in for Class C school. I'm always wanting to get educated. So Class C school is a dental tech school.
Ah.
So I was a dental technician the last 2 years. Went back San Diego for training, and then I was assigned, I wanted to go to the South Pole.
Really?
Yeah. Because they need dental techs down there. Somebody has a toothache, just grab a pair of pliers and yank it out or whatever. No,
they had a station there.
Yeah, that's South Pole.
This is still in the 50s.
Yeah, well, actually, it was the beginning. Well, probably 59.
Early 60s. Yeah.
So I put in. I forgot that. I said I don't care. So I wound up on the Lake Champlain aircraft carrier. I was on the flight deck when the Alan Shepard, and
really, that's amazing.
Yeah, he didn't orbit. They just shot him in the air and then back down again.
They would drop in the ocean by parachute, the top part of the rocket, right?
Yeah. It floated down, and then the helicopters went out and plucked him out before that. Fortunately, some of them sank. They got them out, but they didn't get that float around it.
Yeah.
And I was on that flight deck. It was a riot.
I bet. Yeah. That's a pretty historic moment in history.
Yeah, he was the first man in space.
Yeah.
He didn't orbit, but the idea was there.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So we just covered a good chunk of Otto's time in the Navy, and now we will transition and talk a little bit about his family and how he met his wife. Also, you will hear a lady speaking occasionally, and that is my mom. She was with us in the conversation and sometimes contributing to our talk as well.
Where were your parents from? Where were they raised?
Oh, in Nebraska and, in Deschler.
Uh-huh.
And Mom was raised in Yuma during the Prohibition. And Mom, and she had 3 sisters, and they had to watch out for the revenuers because Dad was Grandpa Trownick. He was making some stuff.
That's great.
And Tom was Tom Trownick,
Yeah.
So Tom and some of his friends, they would go into Denver, to Wazee. I don't know if you're familiar with Wazee. Down there.
Like downtown.
Yeah, huh?
Downtown, yeah.
Yeah, but it was wild in those days. And they took their guns to town.
Yeah. It's pretty. Denver was pretty Western.
Oh yeah.
City,
Yeah. And then Herman, that's my dad's dad. He could hardly speak any English.
He was German?
All German.
Yeah.
It's all German around there. In fact, last time I was at Hebron or Deschler, they still have a German speaking Lutherans. We were raised in the Lutheran church.
Were you as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we lived in Boulder, we went to the Lutheran church up on the campus there, and we had to be confirmed. You know, were you confirmed too?
By force, yeah.
Yeah, and Missouri Synod. Were you Missouri Synod?
Yes.
Oh,
was that Grandma Bernice?
Yes,
that was her thing.
That was
right?
the Houghton side.
Yeah.
Huh?
That was his grandmother's, paternal grandmother's.
Oh.
And German heritage as well.
Yeah.
Well, they were from Nebraska, just like.
Yeah. I think the German history in the U.S. is not recognized as much as it's pretty huge influence in the U.S. German history.
Yeah.
And it's not discussed a lot, it seems.
Yeah, it did. Nobody talks. Of course, I can understand why. But okay, now let's see. Where in the heck were we?
Where'd you meet your wife?
Well, when I was getting transferred from San Diego to the Lake Champlain, I, of course, just stopped at Boulder, visit with my friends. Jack Daw was one of my best friends. He had National Construction in Boulder. So we decided we're going to go up to CU, the Memorial Building up there. And, of course, all I had was my dress blues. I didn't have any savings. Well, we went in there and we were going to play some pool. So I'm playing pool. Jack and I were playing pool, and I looked over there. Now, that is one beautiful lady, So I looked over there, and I said, I got to meet that lady, So I walked around. And of course, Mary had a friend, asked him if they would want to go up on Flagstaff.
Flagstaff Mountain.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so of course, Mary being a Flatlander, Texas. So we went up on Flagstaff, and Mary was scared to death. Of course, Jack Daw he didn't believe in slow. He was zoomed up on top.
So it's the curves and the drive. And,
you've been in Flagstaff?
No, I have. But Mary, this was her first time of doing this.
She'd never been in the mountains. and so at any rate, we looked around. And she didn't have much to say, so we just wanted to get back down. Well, I guess maybe it made her sick, that trip up there. But I'm going to go check see where she is. So I found out the dorm she was in, and her friend said she had to go back to Texas. So I went in and I decided I'm going to find out where this Breckenridge, Texas is. So I went to Lowry Air Force Base. At that time it was open. I got a hop. I always get a hop.
Outside of Denver?
Yeah, out of Denver.
Yeah.
And I got a hop from there to Abilene.
Like on a military?
Yeah.
Military
Yeah. I just show them my orders. I was on my way to the Lake Champlain. So I got to Abilene in the middle of the night. I said, now what direction do I go? Of course, I have my duffel bag. I mean, that thing is heavy. Of course, it didn't bother me. I was on a mission to get to Breckenridge. And I think it was 90 miles. Abilene's 90 miles from Breckenridge. And so I got into Breckenridge. I got hitchhiking. I hitchhiked all over the place. And so I got to Breckenridge real early in the morning, and there was one little cafe there in Breckenridge. So I hung out in that cafe, and I called her up at her grandmother's house there. A very modest little house there. And I said, I'd chase her all over the place, But I could spend a couple of days, and I said, I got to get on the Lake Champlain.
And how much time did you have to make it from? Did you have
to
go?
I don't know. I spent a day or two with her there, and we visited and stuff. And I got her telephone. At that time, I found out she was going to North Texas State University there in Denton. So I got as much information. I got to get on the road. So I got back on the highway with my duffel bag.
Hitchhiking? Hitchhiking?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I got a hitchhike from Breckenridge to Dallas. And that's where that guy was getting off. And so I went, getting out there, standing on Dallas, it was even big then. And so I stuck my hand. I had 3 cars stop to pick me up.
Really?
Yeah.
Now it'd take you half a day probably to get somebody to.
Well.
Oh, in your dress blues.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I had.
Yeah.
From Dallas, I got a ride with a trucker, and it was cold, and I'm standing out along this highway, and it was blizzard out there, and I'm hitchhiking. And this trucker, he slowed down. I got a ride from him. I'd forgotten where I was, but he took me on into Boston. See, that's where the Lake Champlain home port was at Quonset Point, Rhode Island.
You got a ride all the way from Texas to Boston on one go?
No, two.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, I had my pea coat.
Uh-huh.
You know,
yeah.
And they're good.
Wait, I wanted to actually go back to Mary, and you met her in Boulder.
Yeah.
But right after meeting her, she went home to Texas.
Yeah, because she wasn't feeling good, and I thought, oh gosh, I lost her. But I remembered the gal's name that she was there.
She was just visiting.
Huh?
She was just there visiting. She wasn't in the university?
No, she was up there for twirling. You know.
Because she was at the time in university in North Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her mother, Dixie, wanted her to get out and do something, you know, and so she went up there for twirling camp.
For the baton.
You know, baton.
Yeah.
She was good. Man, her and Keiki was her friend's name. They'd throw that baton up in the air. Now they got these things, they flutter around. But man.
When you guys first met, was it clear that, was there attraction there? Was it clear, or was she kind of like, who is this guy?
Well, she probably thought, well, I better get out of town. I don't know. But I wasn't going to let her escape.
And so when you showed up in her hometown, she was fine with meeting? And
yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, but, you know, I was on a mission, too. If I didn't get to the Lake Champlain, I was probably in captain's mast.
Yeah.
You know, I had orders. But we communicated back and forth. I got her number and everything. And she was going to North Texas State University in education. We corresponded, not that much, but spent 2 years on the Lake Champlain. And that was during the Cold War.
Yeah.
You know, that people don't realize, you know, you hear a little bit about the nukes would have been flying, but Kennedy got on TV, he said any nukes coming from Cuba or B-52s are heading to Russia.
This was during the missile crisis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
because we had drills all the time. We left Quonset Point, and the Enterprise, the fleet was out there, you know, because it was very close to World War III.
I think Thule, the place in Greenland, was like the main, if I'm correct, it was the main hub for the bombers that were flying continually, like 24 hours a day, 7. Yeah,
around there, they were ready to drop them,
and that was the main spot where they would, because it was they would never. There always had to be a plane in the air.
There was one.
Yeah,
they were, and of course we had general quarters, and my battle station was right next to this gun tub, you know, on the edge of the flight deck, and I had to be there. And boy, when that 5-inch 38 went off, you couldn't hear anything. Of course, in those days they didn't.
My grandfather was on a gunner.
Was he a gunner?
And he was on one of those big gunboats in World War II, and his hearing got affected by the cannons going off.
Oh, the concussion of.
Yeah.
And then we had depth charges going on.
Oh, yeah.
And then if you were below deck, you'd hear the hull vibrating, you know.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
Yeah. We'd always, and when the sea in the North Atlantic is always rough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, that carrier I was on doesn't have a hurricane bow.
What is that? The hurricane bow?
Well, the new ones. See, this is the bow up here. The new ones that goes all the way up to the flight deck.
That arcing.
Yeah.
To split the water.
Yeah. But see, here are the gun tubs. that they had. And we had a whale hung up on the bow one time.
Really?
We had to stop all engines, back off. I don't know if it killed it or not.
You got stuck on the tub?
Yeah, right at the bow.
Wow.
Yeah. Of course, we were taking green water up over the flight deck. That's how rough it got.
Yeah.
Okay, at any rate, enough about the Navy. When I got discharged, and I got my honorable discharge, but I was darn concerned because Vietnam was started cranking up.
This is mid-60s now?
Huh?
Early to mid-60s?
Yeah, the earliest. See, I got in '62, and
right when it was starting to die out with France, and the U.S. was
And so we got out of there because it was a critical rating, is what they call it, because of Vietnam. But I got discharged. I was glad of that. Get out of there. So as soon as I got out, went back to Boulder. Folks were still living there. They said, I'm going back down to Breckenridge. So went down there. I bought that 55 Buick Super
from your parents?
Yeah, from my folks.
The one that you had wrecked before going into the...
Yeah, that was like a tank. The other car, I didn't kill anybody. But, got in that Buick and they headed toward Breckenridge. And Mary was teaching in Abilene, I think it was. I got there, told her I was back. Of course, we'd corresponded,
Mm-hmm.
And so at any rate, we dated a while. She was an elementary teacher there. I asked her if she'd marry me, and she said, yeah. That was a big deal in Breckenridge.
Beautiful couple there.
Yeah, we had more fun. And then we decided to move to Wichita Falls. And so she got a job there teaching. And I enrolled in Midwestern University. That's where I got the bachelor's in education. Mm-hmm. So we lived there for 4 years. And it cost us $75 a month.
Your rent?
Yeah, the rent. Of course, I thought, well, I'd like to become a dentist, but I found out if you're not a native Texan, you're not going to get into dental school. So then I decided to go ahead and get a degree in education. And I took these classes in embryology and paleontology. I always took these weird courses, and I enjoyed it. Of course, education classes too, and comparative anatomy, and all of these. And some of those were so complicated that they had these Turtox exams, very detailed. Yes, but I loved it. And then Dr. Delquist, I guess his name was, he was a biologist, but he was into that paleontology, ancient, going back in geologic time. And so I'd go with him on digs up to Borger, Texas.
Really?
Yeah, and on a dig, you're going back in time. In fact, one of the things that I uncovered was a saber-toothed tiger tooth, not the skull.
Really?
Yeah, and see, in geologic time, Texas and all that was under the shallow seas. Mm-hmm. Then, I'd like those digs.
Did you have specific training for that, or did you have to train pretty heavily to go on the dig, or was it?
No, it was part of the class that another class that he had. We had to go get specimens, kangaroo rats and all kinds of different organisms that were in that area, and we had to stuff them and display them and all that, and we got graded. We'd get up really early in the morning and go and see if we had what we had in our traps. Yeah.
It's wild.
We had a skeleton house, where they put all of the dead organisms so they decompose and all that. But
so you could see the whole process of decomposition.
Yeah, decomposition, right? Yeah. Let's see, what else did we do there? Oh, the other thing I did while I was in the university, I got into sculpturing because we didn't have any money. So the first one I did, I called it Ambush. This is out of the metal, and it is a cavalryman that got an arrow right in the chest, and he's pinned up against. I think that one's got a cactus. I made two of them.
Did you weld these?
Oh yeah, like I said, we didn't have any money, so I thought, well, let's see what I can do with these. Some of the scrap metal, I'd go around town to the hawk shops and the metal dump, they always have them. And so in the garage there, I made one was called the Buckaroo, kind of a cowboy. The head of the horse was a claw hammer, and in the body was the lengths of a car chain. Mm-hmm. And then the legs were pliers. I heated them and bent them. And then a little cowboy, I'd get a big washer and heat it and bend it like the brim of a cowboy hat and put a nut on top of that. And then the little cowboy is on there. And then at the base, I put two horseshoes together. And I made a bunch of those. And of course, I painted them all flat black. And then this McClurkin's in Wichita Falls, they found out about what I was doing. And so they would like to put some of these in the store and sell them for you. I said, yeah, sure. Because that was always spending money for Mary and I. I would go out and have a nice dinner. And I'd have some of these sitting out there. And they had sculpturing by Marquart on there.
That's great.
So I walk in there, some gone, I'll make some more. And so, but the only thing I regret to this day, Mary didn't get, she said, I don't have one of them. And I felt bad about that. But this was about 5 feet tall.
Yeah, that one's pretty big. The other ones were more tables.
Yeah, this one, I thought, well, now what did I do? So I thought, I called, they have a pancake restaurant there in Wichita Falls. And so they put that in there and they had more compliments about that. I said, I'm going to make another one. The legs were nothing but axles. The ribs were the lifters. And then the vertebrae was the rocker arms. I think that's what it was. And the connecting rods were part of the arms, and I'd whip them up and nothing flat, but it was fun. But I couldn't I tried to find a part-time job, but I couldn't find one, so I said, I'll just make these up. But they were selling in fact, a doctor in San Angelo, I'll never forget it, he called me up, he said, will you make me one of them? And he wanted to put it in his clinic.
That's great.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I boxed it all up and shipped it down to San Angelo. But we lived out there north of Denver at that time.
You'd moved to Colorado?
Huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, after I graduated. In fact, I think I was just about ready to graduate when Kennedy was assassinated.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was taking a comparative anatomy test. They canceled the university. And we only lived Wichita Falls is only about 90 miles from Dallas.
Yeah. That's right.
And so that was a bad deal.
Okay, we've come to a transitional point in Otto's life, having completed the Navy, gotten married to his wife Mary, and is now completing university. And during his university years, lacking opportunities for part-time jobs, he took up sculpting, doing welded metal sculptures and selling them in a local store. He's now about to move to Colorado from Texas, and where he will settle down with his family. And the story begins here.
I had a 1951 Mercedes-Benz.
No.
Yeah. And I love that car. Mary liked to drive it too, but it was a stick shift. And I don't know if you remember Hogan's Heroes.
Oh, yeah.
And, the suicide doors.
Mm-hmm.
And the gas tank was right on the other side of the windshield up there. And I drove that thing from Wichita Falls up to Denver. I was going to go to work with Dad, make a little extra money. I was ready to graduate, so I thought, we need a trailer. I noticed a guy down the street, he had a trailer for sale. I thought, well, I'll trade him that 51 Mercedes-Benz because we needed a trailer.
Yeah.
The guy said, well, sometimes you got to sacrifice. That to this day, and I have a picture of the first car was a 1931 Chevy Coupe.
Really?
Yeah. And that's back when I was in Boulder in junior high, in the high school. I drove it off of a cliff, or Casey Junior High is where I went to junior high in Boulder. And I thought I'm the most beautiful car, that 31 Chevy. And so I said, it needs a paint job. So I got a paintbrush and and some black paint. And I got a picture of that too someplace. And I drove that up in the mountains. But anyway, I got to get back on track here.
Wait, but you were saying you drove that off a cliff?
Well, it was a bluff up there above Casey Junior High. I said, I think I can make it down. Just keep the wheels straight. So I drove it right off, straight down there. And then when I got to the back, down to the bottom of that bluff, and it was steep, I thought, well, if it ever rolled over, I'm dead. Because it was all wood frame under that.
Yeah.
But I had more fun in that. I thought I was so important, And so I got down to the bluff and then got on the road. I said, I'm going to see if I burn rubber. Bad mistake. So I popped the clutch and broke the axle. So,
You were in junior high at this point?
in high school.
High school?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. We always had fights. In fact, that bluff I was telling you about, at lunchtime, all of us guys would run up there. We played King of the Mountain. So we'd run up there and we'd battle it out. And I thought, if anybody come up with a good idea, instead of football, instead of Bronco Stadium, build a huge mound and really nice dirt.
Yeah.
And then have 4 teams, or whatever, have everybody, so many people out there, and have them charge up the top, and who's ever on top gets thrown off, whoever stays up. But nobody gets hurt,
Just tumble down and come back up.
Yeah, keep going. I think that'd be more entertaining. And then there's no rules. Whoever stays up, the last one on the top of it would be the victor. At any rate, but nobody listens to me. Let's see, where were we?
You traded the Mercedes for a trailer.
Yeah, and then we moved to Colorado. Now, at that time, Denver was really hurting for teachers. So I thought, well, I'll try to put my application in at Northland.
This is the mid-'60s?
Yeah. So at any rate, I accepted the one at Northland. I taught there.
And you were living in Greeley?
No, we went to Mary, since she retired out of Texas, she got her retirement. So Mary and I were walking around in this mall there in Northland, and there's this little sign, this house for sale with 10 acres. We went and called them up, and so we bought that place. It was a nice house, but it needed some work. And so I started working on that. And then that's when we had Ingrid. Ingrid was the first. And so I kept teaching. I forgot how many years there.
You were still living north?
In the country there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
North of Denver.
Yeah, north of Denver. I moved a house on that property from Boulder. I bought this house at auction and subdivided that 10 acres, 2.5 acre lots. I moved that one house to the back end of that 10 acres. And the house mover he was nuttier than I am. He moved it from Baseline in Boulder, crossed I-25, heading toward Brighton. I told him, I told that house mover, I said, there's a railroad trestle just east of I-25. And I said, you better measure that. He didn't pay any attention. Well, he got the house stuck underneath that. And the highway department was just about ready to shove that thing off in the ditch.
I bet, yeah.
So I came home from school. Here's the house sitting on the property there. Mary, she didn't know what they do now. So I called him up and said, you got to fix that roof. They had to chop part of the roof off to get it under that railroad trestle.
Did you have to bring in utilities and all that stuff to the subdivided property?
Oh, yeah.
And so you set the house down and then connect it all in?
Yeah. So I put a full foundation under it. And then that house mover, he moved that house over that basement.
Yeah.
I thought, well, there goes the house down in the hole. And Mary, she wouldn't even look up. So at any rate, we got it set on there, and I fixed it all up. But Mary was not a country gal. So I told her, whatever town you want to live in, we'll look and see what we can get. And so we started looking at Fort Collins. And we found a place there in Oak and Peterson by the Library Park.
Oh, right in the center.
Huh?
Yeah, right in like downtown area.
Yeah.
But Denver was not, you didn't want to live in Denver.
Oh, no.
Too much of a city.
Pardon me?
Too big of a city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at that time, when we were looking in Boulder, or in Fort Collins, it was a quiet little town. They had the blue law, which meant everything was closed except Al's newsstand.
Al's newsstand was there?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was the only thing open on
Sunday. Yeah.
This was during the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And so I had to rewire the house. During the Vietnam War, you couldn't get copper wire. It had put whatever, aluminum or something wiring in.
There were shortages during the war?
Oh, yeah. During the
realize
Vietnam
that.
War, you couldn't get that copper wire.
Yeah. I always hear the shortages of like World War II and stuff, but I didn't realize they were the same.
Well, the ammo was flying over there in Vietnam.
Oh, yeah.
So at any rate, we bought that.
And so you're in Fort Collins and you're still working in Denver.
Yeah. For the rest of the time, I told Mary, I don't care how far. The main thing is you're happy, and my daughters, And so that's when I made that commitment that I'll just drive back and forth. And I-25 wasn't bad then.
Was it like a 2-lane road or something?
No, it was 4-lane.
Was it?
Yeah.
So for 24 years you were commuting?
Yeah, it was off and on.
And then you were driving most of the time?
Yeah.
And then sometimes you would hitchhike?
Oh, yeah. I had no problem with that. Mary would take me out to the interstate or the on-ramp there. And it's just amazing. I always made it down to 120th. Then I'd walk from there over to the school. And after school, I'd walk back to the on-ramp. And I didn't care.
What was the reason? Why did you decide to hitchhike?
There was a period when gas was almost rationed. I've forgotten what years those were.
Yeah, like 73 around in there, 72.
Yeah.
How often would you hitchhike when you were doing that?
I can't remember. It was for quite a while.
Like every day of the week for a number of weeks?
Go to school, yeah.
Wow. Well, who would pick you up? What kind of people would?
Oh, some of them. And one guy, he let me know he carried, But I'd let him know I'm a teacher, and I'm not expecting something not to pay. I always give him $5 or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for a free ride, but.
Was it commuters or was it people commuting as well, or truckers or?
Yeah, well, there's one guy I rode with him quite a while. He was working on one of the high rises in Denver, and he'd see me, I'd say, "Well, see you tomorrow." So he'd let me off.
It was you became part of their routine.
Yeah, and I'd pay him. Then he would take me to the school, just let me off the 120th, and I could walk over to the school.
Yeah, it wasn't far from there.
No.
Yeah.
And then in the afternoon, I'd stand. If I'm standing there, he'd pick me up. If I wasn't, he kept going.
So we made it to the hitchhiking part that I mentioned at the beginning. The entire reason that I had originally wanted to talk with Otto is this story about hitchhiking to work. So between Fort Collins and Denver is like 60 miles or so, the distance that he was covering every day by hitchhiking. And I love that it was in response to the OPEC oil crisis and the gas prices, and that it was just part of adapting to the situation at hand and finding his own solutions to life. So when I speak about deviation being tactical, this story kind of portrays the essence of that, where it's a in the moment decision on how to negotiate the terrain at hand. So yeah, I love this story. I love the solution. I love the fact that he became part of other people's daily lives. Those looking for him on the side of the road. I wish I would have asked how his students, what they thought of him hitchhiking to work, how much they knew about the whole story, because that would have been interesting to hear. And yeah, I wish I would have thought to ask it at the time. So now, my mom actually had some information about him purchasing a historic site in Oak, Nebraska. And so you'll hear that she asks him about this now.
Did you ever buy a town in Nebraska?
Did I buy a town?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, kind of. Oak, Nebraska.
Oak?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, it's the historical site of Oak, Nebraska.
It was a town that had kind of died out and was now the land itself was being sold.
Oak was right on the Oregon Trail, and they had raids at Oak, the Indians. In fact, the town's totally dead.
What brought you to wanting to buy the Oak property? How did you hear about it and decide to buy it?
Well, my folks, they lived right across the river, the Little Blue, and they said it's up for sale. And I thought, now where am I going to get some money for that? So I had to ask Dad for $10,000. He was not one alone, even his sons.
Uh-huh.
But so I said, I promise you, and I keep my word. We had that auction, and I got enough money to pay him back, and then I could get to work on that. But I knew there was a lot of work to be done on it, but I said, I can do that. Because it was a beautiful location there along the Little Blue.
So it was one structure, essentially. It was one piece of property with a building on it.
Yeah, well, they had this building, and then back there was the wash house. I made that into a guest room there, put a bathroom in it and everything.
So you lived here for a while?
Oh, yeah. There's a picture in one of these. Yeah, Mary standing on the back there. Here's the house. I'd never put up a brick chimney before, but I said, I can do it. So that was... Then I had a catwalk around... walking around on the edge of that. And then I put that metal roof on it. It turned out pretty nice.
Auctions are another one of Otto's hobbies, and they have been for a long time. Essentially, it seemed that he would go on these sites, look in these auction sites, and if he saw something that was interesting or a good deal, he'd jump on the opportunity without really having any answers as to what he was going to do with the stuff once he had it. So he told stories of getting furniture there, military furniture that was useful in around the house for cabinets and things. And so his house had a lot of this furniture, but he bought so much of it he didn't know what to do with it, and so he ended up donating it to a woman's home, a woman's shelter for single women with kids, and spoke about how it came in handy for them. How it was a nice, it worked well for the situation there, being able to tuck their belongings beneath the beds. And it seemed that he used the auctions both just out of curiosity too, but also if he saw something that was interesting, he would find a way to maybe get one for himself and then get a second one that he could sell to cover the costs, or if he saw some sort of investment opportunity in some of these things. A lot of it was just curiosity and having ideas about how to put things to use in different ways. One of the things that we discussed at the end of the talk that isn't in the recording is about how he bought 2 handicap vans, and he got them cheap, sold the second one to a handicapped man who was really excited about it because it had a loading system that was different than the typical ones, and it worked much better for him. But it covered the cost of Otto's handicap van. He then removed the elevator platform, gutted the interior, and turned it into a camper van. And it cost him nothing because he was able to offset the cost by selling the second one. So he had a lot of stories like that of how he had used these auctions, and we will now go into some of those.
I'd go on DRMO, I'd buy military stuff. I got on my computer and I thought, well, this looks interesting, I'll bet on that. So here comes this 18-wheeler with all those tents. There were probably several hundred tents. Some of them were big, like a hospital tent or galley tent. I thought, well, there again, what did I do this time? And I wind up with so here comes this truck in, and I thought, where am I going to put all this? And I sold some of them to hunters because they were brand new.
And then there was the idea about buying a piece of land for a party site from one of these auctions.
Yeah, when I was teaching there, I get on at General Service Administration on the computer, and I thought, oh, that looks interesting. They were selling some property there at the entrance of Poudre Canyon, and it was 5 or 10 acres right there before you go into the canyon. It was a missile silo, a missile installation. It wasn't a silo. It was the old type where the missile was laying down and they raised it up if they wanted to launch it. So at any rate, I talked to some of my colleagues who I was teaching with. I said, let's check into that and buy that. I thought, if nothing else, we could make a heck of a nice party facility there, because it wasn't a hole in the ground. So we got real wild. I said, let's go up there and find out where it is. So we found out where it was, and you can't see it from the highway. And we went in there, and we said, yes, we could have one heck of a party place here, because all that concrete, and then when they launched the missile, they lifted up, they had this deflection pad, and we thought we could run some water all over that, and people could get on the inner tube and slide down that, and they had tunnels all over in there. Of course, kids have been in there vandalizing it, but we didn't. We put a bid in on it, and I think there were 5 or 6 of us. We submitted the bid, but this one guy, he got it, and because we had big. And I think of what that would probably for KOA campground, because it had right at the mouth of the Poudre Canyon.
Oh, yeah.
But I was always looking at something else that I'd type around on that computer.
And then there's the one about buying used police cars at the auctions. This one is introduced by my mom, who taught elementary school with his daughter, Rachel.
I just remember the stories that Rachel would tell about,
What did she say?
What did she say? About her first car that you bought at an auction that was an old police car.
Oh, yeah.
So
I forgot that.
People in the back seat couldn't get out. She had to get out and let them out.
Yeah. I said, one thing about I bought from Thornton Police Department at auction. They ran good. But one of the things I found out after I bought them, the city of Thornton was, they were putting regular, not unleaded gas, but old gas in them. So they popped that deal out so they could put the nozzle in there.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And here it's the city of Thornton police cars. But the way I looked at it, I got them cheap. In fact, I bought 5 of them. And so Ingrid had one, and Rachel had one. Then I drove some of them back and forth to school, and I've never been a speeder, so I do the speed limit. At that time, I think it was 65 or something, and I'd have cars piled up because they had the big numbers on top
And they didn't want to pass.
And they still had the lights on. I said, I'd like to irritate the hell out of them, because they didn't know for sure what that was.
Now, if you ask a teacher about the beauty of the profession, not far from the top of the list is summertime, summer break. Otto had his own ways for biding time in the summer, and it wasn't much biding. Usually he was creating a new endeavor, putting his time to use in a new and interesting way, and one of which was to become a private investigator.
And then that private investigative agency I had there in Fort Collins. Yeah, I got it.
Were you doing this while teaching?
Oh, yeah. Summertime, you got to have something to do.
So you'd be like a summertime private investigator.
Oh, at night, I came up with this idea. And, of course, Mary, she didn't know about that. The sweetest thing. I said, I can handle it. Well, I had to go down to the state and get licensed.
What did it require to get a license?
Being honest. And no criminal record. So at any rate, I got my license. It's Alpha Investigations.
What was the
Alpha.
name? Alpha.
Yeah. Summertime, I kept busy. A lot of people fooling around. And I was pretty good at shadowing. And I learned a lot about, keep your mouth shut about certain things. But, the husband would come, I think my wife's fooling around. Oh, okay, I'll check it out. So,
was that the majority of the business?
Well, there was all kinds. Some I don't even talk about, but this one, he thought his wife was messing around. I said, okay, I'll check it out. She was Alcoholics Anonymous. He gave me a picture and I watched her. Of course, after the meeting, I followed her down. She was staying in a hotel or something, but nobody else came in. And then Gary Butler, I don't know if you know him, but I do repos too, and some of it was pretty risky. Gary said, you got to go repo this Corvette, 67 model Corvette. Oh. I said, okay. So I rented a van. It was over in Grand Junction. So I went over there, talked to the guy, and said, I'm here to repo this Corvette. You haven't made your payment and all that stuff. So no problem with him. I always repoed Sunday morning, which is, I don't think, very ethical, but everybody's recovering from a hangover. So at any rate, when I got it in at U-Haul, then I had a heck of a time because I never have any help.
So you had to climb out of it?
Oh my gosh, I thought I'm stuck. So I climbed out. I finally got out, loaded it up, and I called Gary Butler. I said, well, I got your Corvette, but where do you want me to put it? So I did. Got the mission accomplished. A few weeks later, Gary calls me again. He says, you got to repo that Corvette. Some guy said he'd pay him for it. Well, he took it out of state, and so he had an idea where it was, in Columbus, Ohio or something. So and I found out it was mafia. I mean, I could tell right off.
And they had bought it from Gary and
yeah, one of them did.
But didn't pay?
Yeah. I don't, what are you thinking, Gary? So I went out there and I thought, well, I may not walk out of here alive, but I don't care. But that's why Mary was always concerned.
Were you concerned about where you might end up?
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
If I'm on a mission, I used to talk pretty good, but I went up to him and I said, I'm here to repossess that Corvette. He says, what Corvette? And he said, well, the Corvette that you got out of Fort Collins. I'm here to get it. He said, well, that's interesting. We dismantled it. It's all, tore it all apart for parts.
Yeah.
The parts bring a big pile. So I went back to Fort Collins, said, well, Gary, it's gone. You don't need a title for parts, and that's a hot item.
You were the last resort, the repo guy.
Yeah. I back off if I see where it's getting, I don't push it. And they usually straightened out, let them know that you got to communicate. Just communicate and we're all right.
Yeah.
But when when the bank doesn't hear, they get a little excited, and that's where I came in. Some of it just common sense. You got to know your limitation.
Yeah.
But I never carried.
As a investigator, you would never carry weapons?
No.
It was all talking and...
Yeah, just talk. Yeah, nobody wins if you got to... I used to be pretty fast, just back off, if I see where we got a confrontation.
So that was one summertime idea, and now we are on to another, or we will be shortly. And this second idea I really like. What I like about this story is the follow through. So many people have ideas, they have talk. I want to do this, I want to do that. And the one I like about here, what I like about Otto here is that he did it. He had an idea, and he took the steps to make it happen, and then diligently followed through, actually paying attention to the events of the day and then seizing upon an opening when it came around. Also, what I like is that he applied a concept from the fishing world, lobster netting, and applied it in a new way to search and rescue operations.
Did I talk about those recovery nets?
No.
Oh, yeah, that was a big deal. So, at any rate, I listened to the radio, and a boat, sailboat or something, went down in Dillon Reservoir with 2 women. And they had the darndest time trying to find that sunken boat with the women. Still in the victims, I should say. And, there's got to be a way to find that. There's always drownings. I came up with this idea of a funnel net. So I had some made up, or one. I thought, well, what the heck's a few $1,000s if it'll work. But what it is a funnel. It's got, the netting is about 3-inch squares, but it's maybe 20, 30 feet long. I've forgotten. I have brochures on it and everything. So it has doors on it, wooden doors, and they use them for lobsters and stuff like that in the ocean. I thought they ought to work perfect for this, in a recovery. So first one, I thought nothing ventured, nothing gained. So they had a drowning down in Denver, and Westminster Fire Department responded. And there was this young man went under in this reservoir west of Denver. And I drove up there, and I had the net in my van. I had this big sign on it, Nets Incorporated. I just made that up. And people say, well, nets, what the heck are nets? But at any rate, so I went ahead and went up to the police chief there, and divers were getting exhausted looking for that body. Somebody saw him go down. So I said, well, you want to try my body recovery net? And I didn't know what to call it. And so I said, yeah, we're worn out, we're low on air and all that stuff. So I just thought, well, they had an outboard motorboat, so I got the net out, and it's kind of heavy, with the doors. So, and the design, when you're pulling it, those doors keep the net open and the vertical. And so, and a chain across the bottom of it, so drag along the bottom. But the only hang up, you got to have a pretty clean bottom. You can't have stumps and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So he said it was pretty clean. So at any rate, we hooked the funnel net up on that and pulled out. And I was on the boat there, kind of showing him, just take it easy, keep that opened up. So we're going along there, and the guy that saw him go down, they put a buoy there. So we went on both sides of that buoy. The first time, went by that, we came back to shore, and they pulled that net in, and here was a sail from a little sailboat or something. So I got that out. Well, let's try it again. And I said, let's go right for that buoy, a marker out there. And so we went back out, and I said, go right over that, because this funnel net's about 20 feet wide. So we went over that, and as soon as I pulled the buoy out, and as soon as we went past that little outboard slowed way down. So we knew we had something. So we pulled it back to shore. And of course, there's some of the dive rescue team is right there. They were pulling in. This one guy He wanted to be out first. Well, pulling that in, and here's this body right between his legs, blue,
Oh.
and he just scared the hell out of him. He wasn't expecting that, but they were sold on it.
And as we were winding down, he mentioned the latest project that's in his mind. For those of us who are deviant by nature, it's how it works. Deviation upon deviation upon deviation. Once you have taken up the deviant struggle for continual deviation, they just pile up one after the next. And so even when you're in your 70s or 80s or 90s, you're still looking to deviate.
It was fun. It was an interesting adventure.
From beginning to end.
Yeah. I got to quit some of this stuff, though. The only thing I'm kind of look forward to is if I can maybe make my little octagon house.
I like that idea.
Yeah. But they have these mini homes, they call them. It's all rectangular. I like an octagon structure, and I think it'd work.
There's like a geodesic dome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a man named Buckminster Fuller who developed geodesic domes. Maybe in like the 50s or 60s or something like that. Really famous. He's really brilliant, man.
Yeah.
And he was talking about like the strength of them, and
Yeah.
I can't remember all the ways he applied it, but he's sort of considered like a pioneer in designing these domes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it did make it something unusual. I do not like walls,
Yeah.
and I thought then if I get bored, I can walk around in a circle inside the house. I don't need to get outside, and then make it 2-story, and then have an observation deck around the side of it.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. And then I can sit out there and watch all the traffic go by. And then out here, every now and then, I'm sitting here and I know it's coming.
The storms or the traffic?
Well, this is interesting traffic coming by here. When you see Air Force's armored vehicles with lights, and I know what's coming next after those guys. Here comes this van with a nuke. It's the big one. It's going up there, and nobody messes around with that convoy. I mean, they've got more dang armor around that thing, taking them out to the silos.
And they use the highway here?
They're right in front of my house.
Oh, they use your...
Yeah, it goes right under. I said, hey, if they break down, I'm going to charge them something. To park that nuke on my property.
Wow.
Yeah, it's got certain markings on it.
Yeah.
It's usually a stub-nosed cab, and when they're unloading that, they have a curtain so nobody can see how they're doing all that.
Oh, I bet.
But
is there a big base nearby?
we're an Air Force base in Cheyenne.
Oh, okay.
That's where they come out of.
And then
I know there's one coming too. The helos.
Yeah. They have the air cover.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you better not even think of interfering with that, especially that van. Yeah, those missile silos are all around here.
So Otto lives alone now in rural Wyoming. His wife passed away a few years ago from cancer. And prior to sitting down to talk with us, he mentioned how it's hard for him to even think about it sometimes. And so it's pretty clear how much he really loved his wife and family. And so in parting, I'll just cue out with some of the brief words that he did mention about his wife and daughters.
Yeah, that Mary, she was the sweetest little woman, I tell you. That's one thing about these Texas women. Man, they have charm.
Oh, yeah.
They do. And they take good care of themselves. That, it was an adventure. My whole life with that Mary, and my girls. That's the only thing I cared about was my girls. just have every day. I had a picture of that of Rachel. At one time, I smoked a pipe, and of course I was changing oil in one of those cars. And we lived on Oak, and she's always wanting to know what I'm doing with that oil. She was always inquisitive. But main thing is they turned out, they got their education, and they're doing good. Well, I'm happy that you guys came up there, and it helps you. I had fun.
Oh, definitely, yeah. No, I appreciate it.